Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a vlog where I am reading the June Buzzword books. This is a readathon created over on Books and Lala by Kayla, and she does a great job of creating really fun prompts for each month that really help me try and figure out creative ways to fit books in that were on my TBR, and then also kind of read some books that maybe I wasn't planning on reading this year, but because of the prompts, I need to find a book that fulfills the prompt. So for June, we have a fun cover challenge and a title challenge. And for the title challenge, we have read a book with memory words in the title, and that can be anything that is pertaining to memory, but I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to read A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. This is the first book in a space opera series, and I mentioned in my May Buzzword reading vlog that I had read, for the May vlog, I read two books that were very dark, a little bit existential, and they were just horror speculative fiction that just were pretty dark reads. So my goal for June was to kind of stray away from the horror genre. That's my most read genre of this year, and I wanted to get something maybe a little bit lighter and then also just try out a different genre. I was thinking it was going to be fantasy, but both of these books ended up being sci-fi, so that's pretty exciting. That's not one of my most read genres, so this should be a fun reading challenge. But this is the book for the memory words. It's got memory in the title. I have heard so many wonderful things about this space opera series, and the blurb for this one is it's a sprawling space opera debut that puts a rare new stamp on the genre. And the dedication to this one says it's dedicated to anyone who has ever fallen in love with a culture that was devouring their own. So this one probably is not going to be like light, easy breezy and fun. It's going to deal with some very interesting, complex topics, but I just thought June space opera seems like a pretty good time to try this series out. And then for the cover challenge works really well with sci-fi as well, and that is celestial. So anything celestial, moon, stars, galaxy, all of that, any of that could work for the cover challenge. So I went with the Stardust Grail by Yume Kitasei, and this one of course has just a gorgeous spacey cover. This one was interesting to me because it is a standalone, but it still feels like it has that space opera sort of feel. On the back of this book, Veronica Roth says that this is an Indiana Jones style outer space heist adventure. Stay for the sensitively drawn characters and thoughtful exploration of other forms of life far beyond our own. So we're diving into space for the June Buzzword challenge. So I'm really excited to read both of these. This one has been on my TBR since it came out, and then this one was put on my radar a little bit more recently, but nevertheless super excited to pick up both. We are going to be kicking off this vlog with A Memory Called Empire. So I am currently about 100 pages into A Memory Called Empire, and I am enjoying it so far. It has been a while since I picked up a sci-fi, in particular, since I picked up a space opera. So the beginning of this book, the prologue, was a lot. It really throws you in, it doesn't hold your hand, and you're thrown into the story, and it's very disorienting. However, chapter 1, you take your time a little bit more. This book is doing a great job of not info dumping. However, there are a lot of things where you're introduced to concepts. You as the reader don't really know what they are. You can figure them out by context, but as you continue reading through it, you start to get a bigger picture of the world, a bigger understanding. And while that can be confusing at times, like I mentioned before, it's just I had to get like my toes in the water first, acclimate myself, really get locked in for the prologue, and then by chapter 1, like I don't don't feel confused or discombobulated at all, but I think this is doing a really great job of introducing concepts, introducing entire societies and technology and cultural elements while not being info dumpy. So I am really appreciating that. But we are following main character Mahit, and she is a newly appointed ambassador. She is from a very small mining station on the outskirts of the Texcalan Empire, and she has been promoted in kind of an unusual way. There have been people sent to her very small station that have told them that they need a new ambassador and to come quickly. So she doesn't exactly have all of the training, all the preparation that an ambassador would usually need, but she goes to the very heart of the Texcalani Empire and she learns that her predecessor has died. It's a mysterious death. She and some other people involved in the ambassador political social circle also think that his death was not an accident. The official story is that it's an accident, and Mahit is really worried that this was no accident. He was murdered. She has some unlikely allies that are telling her that her predecessor has been murdered, so she has to figure out not only like all of these new ropes and new customs, she's really thrown into the water as a very untested ambassador, but she also has to watch her back and try and figure out what happened to her predecessor, also advocate for her community and try to get what they need and prevent the empire from oppressing them too much. So she has to focus on her political duties while she's investigating this, while not letting anybody know that she is investigating this, because she may or may not be next depending on what she finds out. So I do like this murder mystery sort of element and the explorations of empire in this one. Mahit is someone who really appreciates her station, the station where she grew up. However, she also has always wanted to be an ambassador, has always wanted to travel to the heart of the Texcalan Empire, and once she arrives, she's so enthralled with just all of the cultural differences and loves the culture just as much as her own, but starts to really understand like the political consequences once she's actually there of what empire truly means for other smaller communities like the one that she is from. So 100 pages in, this is about 400-ish pages, so about a quarter of the way through this one so far, and I'm really enjoying this space opera. So I am now about 60% of the way through a memory called Empire. This book is due at the library today, so after this update, I do have to return it. I was able to check out the audio book from Libby. So after reading the first 60% of this one physically, the last 40% will be on audio, and it'll be time to see how many things maybe that I've been pronouncing different than the audiobook narrator in my head. So that'll be exciting. I am glad that I started it physically. It's just easier for me, especially with epic fantasy space operas, to start things with the physical rather than the audio. It's my general preference of reading overall. But so far, so good for this book. I'm really enjoying it. I will say it's very, very politics driven. So the action in here, there are some surprises along the way that I'm not going to delve too much into that are more like physical action, but the primary driving forces behind this book are the political machinations of this Texcalan Empire and the different ways in which Mahit as an ambassador has to wrestle with her love of an empire and trying to get what her station, LaSalle Station, like they don't want to be a part of the empire. They want to continue working with the empire. They don't want to be annexed. So she has to work to not only try and prevent that from happening, figure out what happened to her predecessor, and then also try and figure these things out when it looks increasingly likely that there is going to be a lot of civil war and civil unrest at the heart of the empire that may or may not be connected to her journey to find out what happened to her predecessor. So I'm really enjoying that. It's very politically heavy, and I think the way that this world building is handled is so fascinating. One thing that I really like about this book that I have seen in other other books is the way that at the start of every single chapter, there will be little snippets or blurbs from like news articles or the Constitution or books or poems or just little snippets, so you get just a further little deep dive into the society and the culture. So I don't want to give anything away that might be a little bit spoilery, but like every single chapter just starts with those snippets. So chapter 13, which is the chapter that I'm on, we get an imperial proclamation, and then we also get like an internal memo from the LaSalle Council. So even though we are following Mahit, we get those little inserts into the culture and the politics throughout this that really help flesh out the story. One thing that I'm finding it a little bit hard for me is just the character work here, and that is twofold. Mahit is our main character. She's pretty interesting. However, she is not really prepared for her role as an ambassador. It is what she's been trained to do, but because of the circumstances, she is not trained in the normal manner. Her process was really rushed and sped up, so she's really floundering in a lot of ways. In such a politically intense book, it can be a little bit frustrating to follow someone who is not a master at this game, who does feel as lost as the reader. Now, that's not to say I think there is a sequel to this book, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's just a duology and not a trilogy, so I think that's something that Mahit will get better at, but so far she's not my favorite main character to follow, but she's not like my least favorite either. I have noticed that some of the side characters I am enjoying more just as characters overall. And another thing, all of the people in here are human beings. It's an empire in space, but both the Texclan Empire and LaSalle Station, if you're from either of those places, you are human, but for whatever reason, just based on the way that the Texclani citizens like speak and interact, they're very reserved people. For whatever way, their phrasing and the way they talk remind me of the aliens in Star Wars Episode 2, like on Camino, and I don't know why. This is what I'm picturing, and it's a struggle to get my mind not to picture them when they're just humans. They're not aliens, they're just humans. So I don't know why my brain is like reverting to there. So that's just, I think, having to deal with the other struggle in character work, because the politics is interesting, and obviously you want to have a poker face when it comes to politics, but the whole Texclan Empire is based on one of like reservation and not like showing your emotions on your face. So even like as I'm talking right now, I would be more emotive than the people in the Texclani Empire would be. So the speech is very stilted and they're very reserved. And there are a couple of characters that Mahit is closer to, but still not at that point where we have like a lot of back and forth, at least not in the way that we're used to just based on the customs of this empire. So 60% of the way in, it's going good so far, and I'm really excited to see where this book takes me. So I'm gonna go return this to the library and finish it up on audiobook. So I finished a memory called Empire, and I know I said in the last clip that I was going to finish it up on audiobook. However, when I finished that clip, I set the book down, I got all my things ready to go to the library. I forgot to put this book in with the rest of the materials that I was returning. So I got home, realized this was still there. I was able to renew it, luckily, but yeah, I just finished it up physically, and I do think that that was a good idea. Not that there was anything wrong with the audiobook, but just because I had already read so much of it physically, I already had my own idea for how the characters would sound. So I just went ahead and finished it up physically, and I really did enjoy it. I will say this wraps up a lot of the questions, a lot of the mysteries, while also setting up a conflict for book 2. So this is a duology. I will be continuing on with the duology. I am a little curious about what the second second book is going to follow and who the second book is going to follow without getting into spoiler territory, because it does feel like a lot of the characters that we follow, both main and side, their character arcs have been like completed, or not even necessarily completed, but they've had a very satisfactory character arc. So at the end of this one, I do have an idea of like the big overarching plot of the second book, but I don't really know like who exactly we're going to follow and what precisely the conflict is going to be or look like. So I did enjoy this one overall. This is definitely going to be for the people who like a very political sort of story. I think, as with a lot of space operas, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief with just some of the science. Like a space opera to me is more of like a fantasy in space with space or scientific concepts. Like it's more imagining like cool things that could happen. It's not necessarily rooted in reality. So if you know a lot about science, if you especially know more about science than me, because that is not my background, I do think there are things in here that will give you pause and that just aren't right, at least with the science that we know right now and the technology that we have right now. But I don't think that's necessarily the point of a space opera, is to be so true to science. Like take for example Star Wars, and the science behind a lot of the things that happen in those movies like are not grounded in any sort of reality. So I mean, of course it's science fiction, but this one feels like a bombastic space opera with some of the world building perhaps not being all that feasible. But I did really enjoy this one overall. I liked the concept of an imago that was created in here. So Mahit and her station, LaSalle Station, they have these things called imagos, which is basically the recorded memory of a person, and then they put that in a chip in the back of a person's mind so that they have this imago line of knowledge, and that's how they pass down knowledge for really specialized careers and positions in their society. I don't believe everyone on LaSalle Station gets an imago, but for really important things like ambassadors or leaders or really specialized knowledge like pilots, they have these imago lines so that knowledge does not get lost. And I thought the concept of that was really cool, just in terms of the explorative science, but also kind of the philosophical nature of self and preserving oneself that ended up being pretty central to this story. So overall, I really enjoyed this one. First book of the vlog down. So far, so good. We are now going to dive into the Stardust Grail, and I'm super excited to read this Indiana Jones in space style of adventure. So I am now 50% of the way through the Stardust Grail by Yume Kitasei, and I am enjoying this one so far. It's definitely a fast-paced space adventure. It's definitely Star Wars meets Indiana Jones. We are following our main character, Maya, who is a graduate student on Earth. She did not grow up on Earth. She grew up in colonized, now settler territory space, but she is back at Earth because she is seeking a graduate degree in archaeology. And she has a very interesting past, because before she was trying to be on the straight and narrow and obtain this degree, she was actually a smuggler. She was one of the best thieves in the galaxy, and her best friend, who is an alien of a different species than human, used to go around stealing back artifacts from civilizations and giving them back to the people that the items were stolen from. So very much like a Robin Hood type of situation situation, a thief, a morally gray main character with a heart of gold. So that's at the beginning of this story. She has vowed no more stealing things. She's going to be on the straight and narrow and get her graduate degree. However, at the beginning of this story, she gets some really interesting information that could help her find what is known as the Stardust Grail. And not only does she get this information, this new clue that could help her and her friend find this Grail, she also gets new information about what this Grail actually does and the Grail's purpose. So her and her friend seek to find this Grail, and this Grail could help her friend's species be saved from extinction. They are not the only people looking for the Grail though, and as they are going along this quest, Maya kind of learns and has to decide, is she going to steal this Grail at all? If she is going to steal this Grail, is she going to give it to her friend and then her friend's people, or is she going to help Earth with it because some things are happening that the Stardust Grail might help Earth, but at the detriment of the other species? So this is definitely like a fast-paced adventure, and that is a little bit where it's lagging for me a bit. I love the concept, just the execution feels very rapid fire to me. This one's only about 300 pages, and there's just so much crammed in here that the plot, I feel like, is taking a front seat to character development and then just also exploring this kind of setup. The different worlds and stations and alien species and also robots feels very Star Warsy, and I just want a little bit more time in each location. At this 50% mark, their quest for this Grail feels just a little bit too easy. They're just going from one place to another. I kind of want it to slow down a little bit more and have more time for them to explore these different stations on their quest for the Grail, but also have it be just a little bit harder for them because this is an artifact that has been missing for years and centuries even. So it seems a little too easy, but I am having a lot of fun with this one. It's definitely like a very campy Indiana Jones, Star Warsy type of adventure. So I do like that feel, and I feel like that feel is captured pretty well on the page here. Definitely a faster paced one, and this feels like such an easy one to fly through because the stakes are high and the action just keeps going from chapter to chapter. They're shorter chapters, each one ends with just a tiny bit of a cliffhanger, so in a lot of ways it has like a very thriller-esque pace. So far so good. I'm enjoying my time overall. I'm gonna go finish this up and then I will come on and give a final review. So I did finish the Stardust Grail, and it ended up being pretty enjoyable overall. It was definitely a very fast-paced adventure. I do feel like, just for me personally, some of that pacing was just a bit detrimental to my enjoyment of this one. In particular, like the last 30% feels a little bit rushed. I would have enjoyed more time in the locations that we were in, and honestly, I feel like this book should have either been about 400 pages or it should have been a duology, because there is something that happens like right around the 50% marker that doesn't necessarily change like the goals of the main characters and what they're trying to accomplish, but it adds new stakes and new implications for what they are doing, and it really feels like just like a hammer that's dropped down upon the main characters as they have these realizations. I felt like maybe up until that point that could have been like a 300-page novel on its own, and then what was to come could have also been a novel. There were a lot of really cool ideas in here, and I just wish that it just would have gone on for a little bit longer. To use the Indiana Jones blurb reference, it almost felt like if you took two Indiana Jones movies, took both of those plots and combined them into one movie. That's what this felt like. It just felt like the story had enough plot beats that it could have been expanded upon, and just the characters, some of them worked better than others for me. I enjoyed Maya as a main character. I enjoyed characters like Uncle. I don't really know how to say that. It looks like a mix between aunt and uncle. Like some characters worked really well for me. Other ones I never really enjoyed. And they are characters that you are supposed to enjoy. This has one of the tropes of just building a ragtag team that don't really get along at the beginning, and then by the end they do trust each other to do these very high stakes situations. And I just never bought that team cohesion, especially towards the end. Things are still happening where this team does not fully trust each other. This looks like a standalone. It kind of ends where it could go off into a series, but I don't know if it would continue into a series, if I would pick it up, especially if it would be the same pacing. But that's not to say this wasn't an enjoyable reading experience. Like I touched upon in the last update, I think this is so interesting, and the different locations and space stations and planets and different forms of alien life were really cool in here. There were some neat ideas. I especially liked the different way different aliens kind of experimented with gender. There are a lot of different neopronouns in here, and that makes total sense because aliens, like non-human aliens, would definitely have different understandings of gender and biology than we do as humans. So I did like that. Lots of cool ideas in here, and this was a fun, speedy read. If you're looking to get into sci-fi, this feels like such an accessible starting point because it is a big bombastic space opera with a lot of different players. It goes across galaxies, but with the pacing and the structure of this story, it doesn't feel as intimidating as maybe like a high sci-fi or like a thicker, chunkier sci-fi novel. So if you are looking to get into sci-fi and you like a heist story, I think you could really enjoy this one. I know I had fun with it, just wanted a little bit more from the pacing and the characters, but this was a very successful vlog. Sci-fi is not one of my main genres. It's not a genre I reach for too often, but I feel like I have to kind of change that based upon the fact that I did enjoy both books in this vlog. So I enjoyed the Stardust Grail, and then A Memory Called Empire is the start of a duology that I cannot wait to pick up the next book in. So looking forward to July's Buzzword reading prompts. Definitely some interesting challenges playing with punctuation and I think technology. So I cannot wait to see what I will find that meets those prompts, meets those requirements. But that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any sci-fi this year, what's been your favorite book. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!